The door hit the wall hard enough to knock one of the framed compliance certificates crooked. That is the part I remember most clearly. Not the shouting, not the faces in the bullpen going very still all at once. Just that certificate swinging on its nail, tilting about 15 degrees to the left, and nobody moving to straighten it. My name is Elliot Marsh. I'm 54 years old. I have spent 26 years in corporate finance, the last 9 of them at Hartwell Distribution Group in Houston, as Director of Corporate Accounts and Compliance. I have seen a lot of things walk through that office door. What walked through it that Tuesday morning in March was Renee Voss. She was 36, sharp dresser, moved like someone who had never once questioned whether she belonged in the room. She had been CEO for just under 2 years. The job came to her partly because she was good. I want to be fair about that. She was not an idiot. But it also came to her because her uncle Gerald Voss had founded the company 31 years ago and still sat as chairman of the board. That combination tends to accelerate a career in ways that 26 years of showing up and doing the work does not always match. She was holding a stapled packet of paper in her right hand. She did not close the door behind her. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing was that her face was already red before she started talking. The kind of red that tells you the anger had been building for a while, rehearsed somewhere on the drive over maybe. She had already decided what this morning was going to look like before she left her office. She walked straight to my desk and slapped the packet down, hard. "Which one of these 13 people," she said, loud enough that the entire open plan bullpen could hear every word, "stole $1.3 million from this company?" I looked down at the packet. 13 names, every single one of them worked in my department. I did not say anything right away. Behind me, I heard a chair stop rolling. A keyboard went quiet mid-sentence. That particular silence dropped over the room, the kind you only get when something bad is happening to someone specific and everyone else is quietly relieved it is not them. I could feel it without turning around. People were looking at me, then looking at each other, then looking back at me. One of the names on that list was a woman named Gloria who had been with Hartwell for 14 years. Another was a guy named Miles who had just come back from 2 weeks of paternity leave. These were not people who stole money. They were people who filed expense reports and complained about the coffee machine and remembered each other's birthdays. Seeing their names on that packet, formatted like a suspect list, dropped into the middle of an open office on a Tuesday morning, felt wrong in a way I could not immediately put into words. Renee was looking at me the way people look at you when they have already decided the answer and just want to watch you react to it. "I have already spoken to HR," she said. She let that sit for a second. "Then you're fired, Elliot. No meeting, no warning, no let us look into this together." Just that, standing in the open doorway loud enough for the whole floor to hear. I remember a few people looking at me with that particular expression. Sympathy mixed with relief. The storm had found somewhere to land. It was not landing on them. I did not argue. That surprised her. I could see it in the way she shifted her weight slightly, like she had been braced for pushback, and now did not quite know what to do with her hands. Instead, I reached down and pulled open the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a thin gray folder. I had put it together the night before, after something in the quarterly expense report had refused to sit right in my head. Numbers do that sometimes. They do not scream at you. They just hum quietly in the background until you pay attention. I had been paying attention since about 10:30 Monday night, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold, running the same cluster of transactions through 3 different views in the system. I slid the folder across the desk toward her. "You might want to look at page 4, I said. She looked at me, then she looked at the folder. She picked it up the way executives do when they expect to confirm something they already believe. Quick scan, top of page 1, ready to hand it back. Then she slowed down. The packet she had brought showed 13 employees connected to a pattern of reimbursement requests. Individually, each one looked ordinary. Travel expenses, equipment charges, vendor consultations. Together, they totaled $120 million, clean, neat, simple. The kind of thing that looks deliberate when you're looking for something deliberate. What the folder in front of her showed was a different layer of the same story. Every single one of those reimbursements had been approved through an executive override pathway. What that means, practically speaking, is that the standard authorization chain had been bypassed entirely, the one that requires sign-off from 2 department heads and a compliance flag, which meant none of those 13 employees had actually approved their own reimbursements. Someone else had. Let me back up a little because the Monday night part matters. I had been at Hartwell for 9 years. Before that, 17 years split between 2 other companies, both in logistics and distribution. I know how expense cycles work. I know what normal looks like across a quarter, what the typical variance is between departments. What categories tend to spike in Q3 versus Q4? After 26 years, you stop reading numbers as numbers, you start reading them as patterns, and when a pattern breaks, you feel it before you can explain it. What I felt on Monday evening was a cluster of reimbursements that were individually unremarkable but collectively wrong. Not wrong like someone had made an error. Wrong like someone had been careful, too spread out across departments to trigger an automatic flag, too varied in category to look like a single scheme. But when I pulled them into a single view and sorted by approval date, they lined up. All 13 of them approved within a 6-minute window. 5:41 a.m. to 5:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning 3 weeks earlier. Nobody in my department works at 5:41 a.m. on a Saturday. I know this because I have their schedules, their badge logs, and 9 years of knowing who these people are. So I went one layer deeper. Most people who use our accounting system never see the audit layer underneath it. It is not hidden exactly, but it is not something you find unless you know to look for it. I know to look for it because I helped configure it when Hartwell upgraded their compliance infrastructure 6 years ago. The audit layer logs every credential that touches the override pathway, not just what was approved, who approved it, what device, what timestamp down to the second. I printed 6 pages, no commentary, just the data. Then I made a phone call. At 7:10 a.m. on Tuesday morning, before I left for the office, I sent an email to Sylvia Crane, our corporate legal counsel. Attached to it were all 6 pages, same timestamps, same access log, same page 4. I wrote one line in the body of the email. I think you should see this before the day starts. I did not explain further. Sylvia has been practicing corporate law for 22 years. She would understand what she was looking at. Then I drove to the office, made coffee, and waited. Renee walked in at 9:03 a.m. So by the time she slapped that packet on my desk, Sylvia had already had the folder for almost 2 hours, and I had already made a second phone call at 7:35 a.m. to Owen Calloway, VP of Internal Audit. Owen was 61 years old, had been with Hartwell for 19 years, and had seen more financial irregularities in his career than most people see in a lifetime. I did not have to explain much to him either. I was not reacting to Renee that morning. I was 2 moves ahead of her. She flipped to page 3 first. That page had the timestamp data laid out in a simple table, every override approval occurring inside that 6-minute window on Saturday morning. The column on the right showed which credential had been active in the system during that window. She looked at it for a moment, then she turned to page 4. I watched her face. She just stood there, quiet. The room around us had gone completely still again, but differently this time. The first silence, when she had accused the 13 people, had been tense and uncomfortable, the kind where everyone is holding their breath waiting to see where the storm goes next. This silence was different. This was the silence of people sensing that something had shifted without quite knowing what. Page 4 showed the credential name attached to the override approvals. I'm not going to write it here, but it was not the name of anyone in my department. Renee stood holding the folder. Her posture had changed. The confidence that had carried her through the door 10 minutes earlier was still there in the set of her shoulders, but something behind it had gone very quiet. She turned back to page 3, then to the access log again. She was checking, the way you check when you're hoping you misread something the first time. She had not misread it. Behind me, I heard someone shift in their chair. A coffee mug was set down carefully on a desk. People were not pretending to work anymore. They were just listening. You printed this when? She asked. Her voice was steady but quieter than it had been. Last night, I said, and you did not bring it to me. I was verifying the pattern first, and I wanted legal to see it. She looked up from the folder. Legal. Sylvia has had a copy since 7:10 this morning. Something moved across her face. Not quite recognition, not quite calculation. Something between the two, running fast. Footsteps came from the hallway. Owen Calloway stopped in the doorway first. He was a big man, unhurried in the way that people get when they have been doing a job long enough to stop being impressed by urgency. Sylvia Crane came in right behind him. They both registered the audience in the bullpen, but Owen looked at me first. Good, he said quietly. You are still here. Renee looked at him, then at Sylvia, then back at me. You called them, she said. It was not a question. Yes. When this morning, before I came in, Owen stepped forward and I handed him the second copy of the folder. I had printed 2 the night before. He did not make a production of reading it. He turned directly to the access log, spent about 40 seconds on it, then moved to page 4. He did not react dramatically. He just nodded once, slowly, the way you nod when something confirms what you already suspected. I have seen this override pathway used the wrong way before, he said, almost to himself. Once he looked at Renee, not accusing, just steady. The kind of steady that makes people suddenly aware that the situation has become very official, very fast. Sylvia took the folder from him. She read page 4 without expression. Then she closed the folder carefully. "We should continue this in a conference room," she said. Nobody argued. The bullpen started moving again after they left. Slowly, people started moving again. Slowly. Keyboards picked up, chairs shifted, but nobody was actually working. I could feel it without looking up. The kind of motion that is just cover for listening. I stayed at my desk. There is a thing that happens after a public accusation. Even when the facts come out in your favor, the accusation does not disappear. It just gets complicated. People in that room had heard my name connected to $130 million before they heard anything else. Some of them would remember that first sentence longer than anything that followed. That is just how it works. You cannot unring a bell. You can only wait for the other sounds to get louder. I opened my laptop and pulled up the quarterly report I had been working on before any of this started. I did not actually read it, but having something open in front of me gave my hands something to do. About 20 minutes after they walked down the hall, Gloria stopped by my desk. She was one of the 13 names on Renee's packet. She had been with Hartwell for 14 years, longer than me, and she had the kind of quiet steadiness that makes a finance department actually function. She did not say much. She just set a fresh cup of coffee on the corner of my desk, nodded once, and went back to her station. That was enough. A few minutes later, Miles came by. He was 31, had just come back from paternity leave 2 weeks ago. Still looked like he had not slept a full night since the baby arrived. He stopped at the edge of my desk and said, "For what it's worth, nobody here thinks you did anything wrong." Then he went back to his desk before I could respond. I appreciated that he said it. I also knew that what people think in the moment and what they remember 3 months later are sometimes two different things. That is not cynicism. That is just 26 years of watching how offices work. The conference room down the hall stayed occupied. I could not hear what was being said. The walls at Hartwell are not thin, and whoever had chosen that particular conference room had chosen one of the interior ones with no glass panels facing the corridor. But I knew Owen was in there. I knew Sylvia was in there, and I knew that the 6 pages in that gray folder were sitting on the table between them and Renee Voss. Page 4 does not require much interpretation. The credential attached to those override approvals was not ambiguous. It was not a shared login or a service account that multiple people had access to. It was a named individual credential, tied to a specific user profile with a login history and an associated device ID. Owen would know exactly what that meant. Sylvia would know exactly what it meant for the company's exposure. And Renee would know that the conversation she had walked into my office expecting to have was not the conversation that was actually happening. At some point around 11:15, I got up and walked to the kitchen to refill my coffee. The kitchen at Hartwell is a straight shot down the main corridor, past the conference rooms. I did not slow down when I passed the occupied one. I did not look through the door gap, but I could hear the low register of voices, and none of them sounded like they were wrapping up. On my way back, I passed Adrian from the IT compliance team. He gave me a look that was somewhere between sympathetic and curious. I nodded and kept walking. There was nothing useful I could say to him in a hallway. Back at my desk, I checked my email. Nothing from Sylvia, nothing from Owen, nothing from HR. Just the usual Tuesday traffic, a vendor follow-up, a budget reconciliation request from one of the regional managers, a reminder about the quarterly systems review scheduled for Thursday. I answered the vendor email. I flagged the budget request. I left the systems review reminder unread. Around noon, one of the junior analysts, a woman named Nadine, who had been with the company for about 8 months, stopped by my desk with a question about a vendor invoice discrepancy she had flagged that morning. It was a routine question, the kind of thing she would normally have handled herself in another few months. I walked her through it. We spent about 12 minutes on it. It was the most normal 12 minutes of the day. After she went back to her desk, I sat for a moment and thought about that. The invoice she had flagged was for $4,200. It had a coding error on the department allocation. It had nothing to do with anything that had happened that morning, but it was a real problem that needed a real answer. And she had come to the right person for it, and we had solved it. That is the job, most of it anyway. Not the gray folders and the override logs in the conference rooms. Most of it is a junior analyst with an invoice question on a Tuesday morning. I looked up at the wall behind my desk. The compliance certificate was still crooked. Nobody had touched it. It had been sitting at that 15-degree angle since Renee's hand hit the door at 9:03 a.m., and nobody, including me, had thought to straighten it. I got up and straightened it. Then I sat back down. The conference room was still occupied. The clock on my screen said 12:47 p.m. They had been in there for just under 3 hours. I picked up the quarterly report again. This time I actually read it. At 1 to 2 p.m., the conference room door opened. I heard it more than I saw it. The particular sound of that handle, the slight drag of the door across the carpet. I had learned that sound over 9 years of working in this building. Sylvia came out first, then Owen, then Renee. They walked past the bullpen without stopping. Renee did not look toward my desk. She walked with the same upright posture she had carried in at 9:03 a.m., but something in it was different now. The difference between confidence and effort. When you're confident, you do not think about how you're walking. When you're holding yourself together, you do. Owen caught my eye as he passed. He gave me one small nod. That was all. Sylvia stopped at my desk about 2 minutes later, after Renee had turned the corner toward the executive corridor. "We will need a formal written summary of your findings," she said. "Sourced and documented. Can you have it to me by end of day Thursday?" "Yes," I said. She nodded. "Good." Then she started to leave, stopped, and turned back. "The 13 employees on that list, none of them are in any kind of jeopardy. I want you to know that." "I know," I said, "but they should probably hear it from someone official." "That is being handled this afternoon," she said. Then she left. I sat with that for a minute. The 13 people on Renee's packet had come into work that morning not knowing their names were on a list. They had found out through the whisper network that runs through every open plan office. The way bad news always travels in those places, fast and incomplete and slightly wrong in the details. By lunchtime, most of them knew the broad shape of what had happened. By the time Sylvia's conversation with them happened that afternoon, the relief in the room was visible enough that Gloria told me about it later. She said the HR rep looked almost as relieved as the rest of them. I spent the rest of the afternoon at my desk. I started drafting the formal summary for Sylvia. It was careful, methodical work, sourcing each claim back to a specific log entry, a specific timestamp, a specific credential event. The kind of documentation that does not leave room for interpretation or dispute. After 26 years, I'm good at that kind of work. It is not exciting. It is just precise. Around 3:45 p.m., my inbox updated. One new message. Sender, Gerald Voss. Subject line, "Can we talk this afternoon, Elliot?" I read it once, then I set my coffee down, then I read it again. Gerald Voss was 71 years old. He had built Hartwell Distribution Group from a regional freight operation into a company with offices in 6 states. I had met him in person maybe a dozen times over 9 years, usually at the annual company review or the occasional all-hands meeting. He was not the kind of chairman who wandered the halls. When he reached out directly, it meant something. I thought about what that email meant for about 30 seconds. Then I closed the laptop. Some things do not need a reply right away. The situation was going to develop at its own pace regardless of whether I responded in the next 10 minutes or the next 2 hours. Gerald knew where my office was. If it was urgent, he had a phone. I opened the laptop again and went back to the documentation for Sylvia. By 5:30 p.m., the floor had mostly emptied out. The kind of quiet that settles into an office at the end of a day that has been too long and too strange. A few people stopped by my desk on their way out. Miles, a guy named Reed from the Northwest Accounts team. Nadine again, this time just to say goodnight. Small things. The kind that do not mean much individually, but add up to something when you pay attention. I stayed until about 6:15, finished the first draft of the summary. Saved it, sent myself a backup copy. Then I got up, straightened my chair, picked up my bag, and walked out. The building was quiet. The parking lot was mostly empty. Houston in March is warm enough that you do not need a jacket in the evenings, and the air outside felt like a different world from the recycled stillness inside. I sat in my car for a few minutes before I started it. I did not feel like I had won something. That is the honest answer. A public accusation had been made in front of my entire department. And even though the facts had corrected it, the correction does not travel as fast or as loud as the original charge. Some people in that building would spend the next few weeks quietly recalibrating what they thought of me, and a handful of them would never quite recalibrate all the way. That is just how it works. But the 13 names on that packet were cleared. The documentation was done. The right people had the right information. And somewhere in an executive corridor, a 36-year-old CEO who had walked into my office that morning with all the certainty in the world was having a very different kind of day than she had planned. Truth has a slow gravity to it. Eventually, everything settles around it. I started the car and drove home. If you have spent enough years doing honest work in a place that does not always reward it, you already know what this story is really about. It is not about the folder or the timestamps or the credential on page 4. It is about the Monday night. The moment when something felt wrong and you did not look away from it. You stayed at the table, you pulled another report, you followed the number until it told you what it knew. Most people walk past that moment, they tell themselves it is probably nothing. They tell themselves it is not their problem. If you are the kind of person who cannot do that, who has to know, who has to be sure, then you already understand why Elliot did not go home and sleep on it. And if you have ever been the one standing in that office when the storm came through the door, you know that the only thing that holds in a moment like that is the work you did before it arrived. Do the work. Keep the records. When the door hits the wall, be ready.